Once you give up your status as alcoholic, you have to rebuild your 4 planes: the physical, emotional, career, and spiritual. But going to Alcoholics Anonymous long-term actually prevents you from rebuilding these planes and yourself as a person. Stay tuned and I'll tell you why. I have mentioned in previous episodes that in order to recover and be cured from your prior addiction from alcoholism, one must reinvent his 4 planes of being. These planes, addressed in my book, are the physical plane, the emotional sphere, the career realm, and finally the spiritual plane. I advise people who are at the bottom of an abyss in their lives to analyze their entire being by assessing each of these planes, whether they were alcoholics or not. Many people, besides alcoholics, do fall into the depths of the abyss. The once college athlete is now 100 pounds overweight and can't do 10 push-ups. People tumble into the depths of anxiety and depression. After 20 years in the field, one realizes that he not only doesn't like his career, but downright despises it. One lies awake at night and sees his being as non-significant in the universe. These planes will feed off each other for good or bad. Improvement in one plane tends to elevate the rest, and the same holds true if one sphere begins to decline. A lack of physical fitness affects the emotional plane, for negativity sucks the energy, which will result in just flopping on the couch after pulling in the driveway. The lack of fitness then continues to plummet, taking the emotional plane with it. Your spiritual self then reflects, just floating with the tide instead of navigating towards its proper destination in the universe. These planes can rise together and can just as easily fall if not looked after constantly. The recently sober's planes of being are most likely sitting in the dark bottom of the abyss. They would have to be. Physically, he's a wreck. I can remember my own time with John Barleycorn. I doubt I was consistent in the gym 20% of my existence. In the last years, it was probably under 10. The alcoholic doesn't exercise and he doesn't eat much. For years, the proper nutrients were missing from his diet, which the main supplements were the hops and barley. His physiology has suffered on and off malnutrition for years, most likely. The emotional plane is sitting right next to the physical sphere. No alcoholic is emotionally stable. He has spent years in constant agitation from the daily withdrawals as the tide from the night before recedes. Irritation exploded many times to rage in his drinking days. And the second he ends his friendship with good old JB, his emotions will upend, spilling into episodic bouts of depression, anger, anxiety, and hopelessness. And if the former alcoholic clears 6 months sober, these post-withdrawal symptoms abate, but then they're replaced with a feeling of disconnect from Team Human Race. For he's living in a world in which he's unaccustomed. I don't think I went out socially for 3 years after I broke it off with John Barleycorn. The career for the alcoholic was nothing more than an inconvenient interruption of the consumption of alcohol. Was I jazzed about continuing education courses and physical therapy when I was knee-deep in the bottle? Not really. Luckily, the genre of physical therapy I was in at the time was hospital work, which is pretty basic in our field. But it was only after I quit that I switched into the outpatient arena and began the years-long process of becoming proficient in manual therapy in terms of joint mobilizations and soft tissue release, as well as muscle rebalancing techniques. I couldn't have put that focus into these skill sets while killing 12 tin soldiers every night. Very few can put in full effort when they are hungover every single day. As far as the spiritual realm, who can see their proper place in the universe when their off hours are spent severely intoxicated? You are far separated from your natural being when you're either drunk all the time or recovering from the hops. You certainly don't have any peace, as your physiology is in a state of constant agitation with emotions that continually fluctuate depending on the tides of barley that ebb and flow in your being. This is what I address in my guidebook to the reinvention of self. It is a manual that's meant for everyone, as it's not just alcoholics who have wandered off into the dark forest. As Thoreau once stated, most do live their lives in quiet desperation. But he never said it had to be a rule of existence. Some people need help in one plane and some several, but the alcoholic has destroyed all 4 planes. As said, they're at a rock bottom. That fact will only become apparent once the alcoholic quits the friendship with the substance. The revelation of how bad his life has actually become in all 4 of these planes. But like a car that has been neglected for years sitting in the outside garage, these planes can be rebuilt. You can climb out of the abyss. There is no reason you cannot regain physical fitness to a high level. emotional tranquility, advance your career, or even find a new one, and see your place in this functioning universe. My contention is a method of Alcoholics Anonymous will not only impede your advancement in all these spheres, but will prevent you from rebuilding them altogether, and I have logical reasons for stating so. First, there's the physical realm. I describe in my guidebook for reinvention that the physical plane is the foundation of everything. Without a solid foundation, your new mansion of life will not stand for long. As said, the newly sober's physical plane is at rock bottom. While an alcoholic, you badly mistreated this temple of your body by not only not maintaining the physicality, but actually pouring a toxin into it for years and even decades. So now you have to rebuild it. I state clearly that you don't jump from doing nothing to exercising hours a day. You simply build a program of high cardio work for 45 minutes to an hour, 4 to 5 days a week. For me, I go 2 days on and 1 off. My workouts last an hour and 40 minutes only because I spend 30 to 40 minutes lifting weights in my sessions. But lifting weights is not necessary. Cardio fitness is more important for longevity. And I know some who engage in just a few strength-based exercises after their cardio program for basic muscle maintenance, but no more than an hour should do it. You can't engage in this fitness program if you're in the rooms every night. I have said in previous episodes that hiding in the rooms may be necessary for the first 30 to 45 days when the cravings are at the worst, as well as the emotional upheaval. And I've also said that you should transfer out of AA later to engage in the holistic recovery program that I'm describing. What do you think is going to make you feel better? Engaging in 45 minutes of moderate to high cardio movement, which will naturally drop those feel-good endorphins, or sitting in a circle? The first 2 years of protracted withdrawal are going to have episodic bouts of anxiety and depression. Exercise diminishes these symptoms. That's why it's a huge part of my recovery program. And the people sitting in the circles 5 and 6 nights a week, they aren't doing it. And I dare say from my experience with these longtime cult members that they would rebuke you for choosing to go to the gym 5 nights a week instead of their meetings. But I can tell you from the 2 meetings I went to that I didn't feel good upon leaving. I felt like I wanted to go back to the bottle after 11 months of sobriety. I can promise you that your general sense of well-being will be far more improved spending your time in a fitness routine than sitting in the rooms. Not only are the members of AA not engaged in an exercise program, they're putting massive amounts of unhealthy substances into their bodies during these meetings. They suck caffeine down like it's water, as well as smoke at every intermission, usually compounded by sugar intake from all the sweets people bring in to counter the cravings at the meetings. I say quite freely in other episodes that these types of additives may be needed during the first 2 phases of recovery that last to that 30 to 45 day mark, when the cravings are continuous and many times intense. But this shouldn't be a lifelong habit, for the physical fitness program is matched by a clean diet, which doesn't include smoking at all. If the fitness is the brick foundation, the diet is the mortar that holds the structure together. You will feel less of the symptoms of the protracted withdrawal phase to the 2-year mark of cure with a clean diet as well. It's fine to have a few cups of coffee a day and a cookie or 2, but not to the extent of the members in the rooms, who most are smoking as well. Attending those meetings long term is absolutely placing a roadblock in front of your physical recovery. And that barrier also stops your emotional recovery. First, the AA philosophy states you are always an addict. Always sick, always in a state of recovery. What a load of nonsense whose detergent is anti-reason. 2 years after your physiology has rebalanced, you are not an addict anymore. Telling yourself you are for life is a self-esteem killer. You are continually reiterating that you are a damaged human being, and you are living in fear of always relapsing. For it is true that you can become an addict again, but there is a simple solution to never venturing back down that road. You simply keep your contract of never shaking John Barleycorn's hand again. Do that, and you'll never be an addict again. That's it, and that's all. When you reach cure, the damage will be repaired physically and emotionally. You will understand that you were a damaged human being once, but you are not today, for you have reinvented your emotional plane. You also can never recover emotionally if you're constantly living in your past, and that's what AA does inside of its rooms. Going over your story is appropriate in the beginning of your recovery, But 10 years later, still talking about how you lost your job, your wife, your friends because of alcohol addiction a decade ago? You shouldn't even be a part of AA now. You should be a new human being. Why in God or the magic elf's name would you want to be living in that past dark era and listening to other stories that continually remind you of who you once were? I know the stupid things I did while intoxicated in those long ago days, and I can't undo those liquid lapses in judgment, so I have to let them go. I have an entire program on emotional recovery, which includes meditative activities added to the fitness program that will benefit you much more than sitting in negativity most nights. If you stay in AA, you will continue to exist in that very negativity. The third plane is career advancement or just plain advancement of self. This includes progressing in your job with certs, possibly obtaining educational credits, or even a new degree or trade, or learning to invest on the side, or taking up a side hustle like woodworking. Anything that keeps self progressing forward. All the above requires time to engage in this progression, and the AA member is spending that time in the rooms most nights. Their job is just their job, but their real endeavor is an unending recovery that will last until they're finally under the headstone. They will become sponsors, committee members, and spokesmen for the cult because their focus of life, their master status, is a forever alcoholic. Which leads directly to why AA prevents you from advancing the spiritual plane. The spiritual plane I describe in my guidebook to Reconstruction of Self is what you see out your window in your newly built mansion, how you view yourself in the universe. The AA member sees himself as an alcoholic. That is his place in the galaxy, one who is always in recovery with the devil on his shoulder, telling him he knows he's sober today, but can't tell you what it'll be tomorrow. In my worldview, alcoholism was something that was part of my past. It was part of my being, and hugely so in the last years of my addicted days. But that past has nothing to do with the perception of my place in the universe today, for you're in a rhythm with that universe when you are progressing yourself in its realm. Even as largely 80% retired as a physical therapist, I continue to progress my skill sets for the 20% of my life I still engage in the field. At this point in my career, I really don't have to keep gaining knowledge, but when one continues to advance, one is living versus just breathing. And I have another mission before that breathing ceases, to bring as many out of the toxic program of AA as I can, to help guide people to their own reinventions of self, so they don't spend the rest of their lives, the minority who do stay sober in the AA protocol, sitting in the rooms when they could be out creating the best versions of themselves. That's my mission on this terrain, not yours maybe. Maybe you go out and become a big brother or sister, or start your own business that contributes positively to this world. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're attempting to leave the campsite better than you found it before you go. But my contention with AA is none of these planes can be advanced if you're sitting in the rooms every night. Worse yet, the AA method is actually preventing you from rebuilding these planes. It should have been a program of recovery, not a permanent safe house that you would never leave. So you can go with AA. Feel free to spend all your off time sitting in their rooms, lingering in the past while you ingest unhealthy substances and let your physicality go. Don't advance yourself because your time is spent every night in the circle, because that's the only place you feel like you can continue to abstain. Or you can engage in my program, gaining the endorphin drop most nights from physical fitness activity combined with healthy diet, dropping those cigarettes which are destroying your lungs and damaging the rest of your health. Spending time improving yourself instead of telling your story for the 1000th time. Viewing yourself as a perfect fit on this beautiful earth instead of looking in the mirror and seeing a forever addict because of something you engaged in years ago. And ask yourself honestly, whether at the beginning of your sobriety or years into it, which sounds like the better existence? And if you want some more reasons why AA is not a healthy way to advance to recovery, check out my playlist card at the end of the video. And check out my own guidebook on how to recreate your own life on all holistic planes. Reinvention of Self, How to Change Your Life and Being Forever. Link is on the video description as well as the channel page banner. And remember, you made the contract, so keep it. Be sober at sundown, and I will see you at the next sunrise.